There was a lot of trepidation going into this Iron Man match because everybody knew what Bryan Danielson was capable of. I think that we've seen it in AEW, what Bryan Danielson is capable of doing for 60 minutes inside of a ring. I don't think that there's any question as to whether or not he could probably do 2 60-minute Iron Man matches back to back, but MJF has never done anything like this. In fact, MJF is so character over in-ring wrestling based that he's actually bragged about it. He's come on this show and bragged about being an attraction. And attractions generally don't do high-paced 60-minute matches. So there was that kind of thing. How is this guy going to survive in a situation like this? And not only did he survive, he thrived. I thought a wonderful story was told over the course of 60 minutes that started from the beginning. You could tell that Bryan Danielson was telling the story of a wrestler who was not only fully capable of a 60-minute Iron Man match, but was chomping at the bit, couldn't wait to get in there for the full 60. He was ready to start the match. Action. Whereas MJF was also aware of what was in front of him and who he was against. And the first 15 minutes of the match was really MJF strategizing. He took a water break like 10 minutes in. He was going for near countouts, roll in, roll out, take a stroll through the crowd, dump a drink on a kid, which I would hope that Tony Khan is hooking up that mom with an autograph pack for that wet kid. It didn't seem necessary, but it is MJF after all. And I'm going, is this the story? Or is this Max trying to figure out how he gets through 60 minutes? And the answer, it was the story. Because once you hit 45, the action started to ramp up. 15 minutes in, 45 left. The action started to ramp up. And this story keeps building on itself and building on itself and building on itself to the point that you probably have, I would have to look at other Iron Man matches, but the most action, second for second, that I think I've ever seen in a modern day 60-minute Iron Man match. It was really remarkable to watch the rate at which these two were going. And the way they figured out, I like that there were multiple falls in this match. It made sense. The fact that MJF has never wrestled a match that I think they said on commentary was longer than 42 minutes or whatever the time was, it would make sense that MJF would not be able to get through 60 unscathed. It would make sense that even somebody like Bryan Danielson might have trouble, and they covered that up well with MJF eating the disqualification through the low blow and then picking up the 2 falls. I don't know that Bryan Danielson stays down for 2 falls after a low blow, but maybe it was a really solid hit to the dick that kept him down on the ground because he got his 2 falls. Now they're at 2-2. They're going. I just thought it was really an incredible watch. The blood starts pouring down. There were, even I'm sitting there on the edge of my seat during some of those submission holds where Brian is reaching for the ropes and Max is reaching for the ropes. And they can't get it. I just felt like it's a very difficult thing to do when by the time the match starts, you've had almost 3 full hours of heavy action-packed matches. You've had barbed wire. You've had aerial assaults. You've had powerhouses. You've had everything. And now you got to keep that same crowd entertained for the next 60-plus minutes. And that crowd was on the ride with Bryan Danielson and MJF. That crowd was on the ride and was with them every single step of the story. And ultimately, that's what professional wrestling is. It's using your physicality to take the audience on this journey with you. MJF was able to prove a lot of people wrong and add certain tools to his arsenal. MJF is now able to step forward and say, I am capable of this, I am capable of that. MJF now becomes a larger threat because this skill set that we had never seen evidence of, we have now seen evidence of. But it was all done in such a way where he didn't lose any of his heel credibility. If MJF is just way more excellent than we thought he was and just wins this Iron Man match with honesty and earnesty, MJF risks becoming a babyface. MJF is no longer a heel. But if we can put some sneakiness in there, if we can have him tapping out while he's holding the rope, so he's tricking Bryan Danielson now, if we can have him use a couple of foreign objects, if we can have him manipulate the rules and then break them, well, now we got ourselves a real heel. They went with the full-on WrestleMania 12. I felt like the body of the match was reminiscent of the Triple H Rock match in some ways. And then the finish was straight up WrestleMania 12. I mean, straight up Tony Khan speaking with Tony Schiavone, Schiavone playing the role of Gorilla Monsoon as he talks to the referee and says, you know, we're going to keep this match going. Now, the difference is, and even to the point that Bret Hart had the sharpshooter on Shawn Michaels when the bell rang, and you could speculate that Bret would have won. MJF actually tapped as soon as the timer went off. But again, I would speculate, this is something I've talked about on the podcast before. I would speculate that once you know the match is over, it only makes sense for you to start tapping. Once you know that it doesn't count anymore, you should tap immediately. If there's no referee counting to 3, there's no motivation for you to kick out. If there's no submission call to be made, you should start tapping immediately. Because hopefully your opponent won't be thinking on the same level that you are and he'll release the hold. But however you want to call it, it was the WrestleMania 12 finish, which is great. I think it's a perfect Iron Man match finish. I think the WrestleMania 12 finish at 0-0 was probably better for babyface, whereas this one was better for the story that was being told. And, you know, I mean, ultimately, even the finish was really good. I thought that I thought that the MJF's entrance made it look even bigger, right? MJF's entrance made it feel bigger. It felt more spectacular. It felt more like an event. Having that orchestra come out and play MJF's theme song. And then the finish itself, I really liked the camera angle. We talk about the production value of AEW. I really liked the camera angle where the camera was down hanging out with MJF, and MJF is holding that oxygen tank. Because when the oxygen tank and the water came in the ring after the 60 minutes was hit, I thought to myself, I don't know that that's the greatest idea. We've seen Iron Man matches before. You would have to think that a lot of AEW fans are hardcore wrestling fans. So a lot of AEW fans have seen Iron Man matches in WWE and Ring of Honor, wherever. But you don't really see oxygen be carried into the ring. With Shawn and Bret, they didn't need oxygen. With Hunter and Rock, they didn't need oxygen. Even the 30 minutes with Sasha and Bayley, they didn't need oxygen. So I'm like, why are they, I don't know if they need to bring in oxygen to make it seem like these guys are totally whipped to that degree after 60 minutes. But then I said, yeah, but, they were fighting at such a rate for such a large portion of the match that maybe that's how you get away with it. But all of that was wrong. It was a device. The oxygen came in as a device to get us where we're going. It's like the loaded gun theory in a movie. If in Act 1 of a movie, a loaded gun is introduced to the story, by the time we hit Act 3, somebody had better have had a gunshot at them. Though the oxygen being brought in for Brian and Max at the end of the match, or so we thought. It was the loaded gun theory. It was a device to get us to the point where MJF is sitting outside the ring and he's holding that oxygen tank. And the camera's aware of it, and we're aware of it. And MJF is kind of, the way he's looking, he knows that the camera's on him. He knows that we, the audience, are aware of what he's about to do. But most importantly, he knows Bryan Danielson is not aware of it. And even more importantly, that the referee is not aware of it. So as long as that's all, he doesn't care. He doesn't care if the whole world knows that he's about to cheat. As long as the referee and his opponent do not know, he's good with it. And that's exactly what it was. Now, the fact that if he had hit Daniel Bryan with the thing and then just rolled in the ring and pinned him real quick, then it would have been like, oh, Daniel Bryan should have won that one. But the fact that it kept going just a little bit, the fact that after Bryan had him in the submission hold, when they restarted the match, Bryan wasn't able to finish him right away. It lent to this thing where Bryan Danielson loses absolutely nothing having lost this match. Bryan Danielson has only gained even more so, I think, in the eyes of the audience. But even more importantly, MJF doesn't leave this going, yeah, but he didn't really win. He really won. And that is the most important thing to get him to whatever his next story is, that he really won. Now, what is his next story going to be? I don't know. Ricky Starks? MJF, I feel like that's the other thing. After a match like this, MJF's stock has raised even further. He's now beaten Jon Moxley on pay-per-view and Bryan Danielson in an Iron Man match on pay-per-view. So the next big opponent for MJF has to be on that level. I feel like it has to be Adam Cole, right? I mean, you know, I wouldn't mind him having another confrontation with Ricky Starks. It was great to see Ricky Starks get the victory over Jericho tonight. But the next several months would have to be spent elevating Ricky Starks to the point that he looks like he's going to be the face of the company in order for him to be a suitable pay-per-view opponent for MJF at this point.